And since we have an informal group today, I think if you have questions while I'm talking, please don't hesitate to let me know. Okay. I'm really open to doing that. Okay. So Jessica, is my screen sharing properly for me? Give me a thumbs up. Kind of, maybe.
Yes.
Okay, I see her face, but like maybe it's frozen a little bit.
Oh, that might just be my internet. Or your internet.
And I also wanted to make sure that I acknowledged the participation of not just myself to this and efforts to unveiling American genius. This presentation, as far as reinstalling our permanent collection, has really been a group effort. So I really need to thank Jessica Sundstrom, because she really did come through and had lots and lots of comments. And we also had Catherine Ransbottom, who's the associate curator. We, of course, Belinda Tate weighed in, and also former colleagues and members of staff, Fari Nzinga, who was the curatorial fellow last year, Kim Long, who was the adult programs curator, and of course, Michelle Stempien, who was director of education. They all really weighed in. We worked really hard together to think about how
I'll be right there.
how we were presenting our collection. And I have to say, on a personal note, one of the first things that I saw when I came to the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts, I was actually interviewing for the position, was a show called The Way Forward. And it really was very striking to me. It introduced me to the KIA's collection. And I will say that I started thinking about the reinstallation based off of some of those themes initially. And so, as you can see in front of you, this is the gallery formerly known as Traditional. I'm taking a page from Prince's book, formerly known as Traditional. When you see this gallery, we have taken some things and done something new to it, but we are really looking at unveiling American genius as the story of art and an experience of new perspectives through a thematic presentation from featuring artworks from our permanent collection, right? And so we're really hoping that you, as members of Kalamazoo, feel really proud of this is your community art collection, right? But we also want you to explore works that you've seen before and think about them in different and new and exciting ways. And so typically when you think about a permanent collection, you really think about it from the perspective of linearly, right? You think of a timeline, you really start from like one point in history and then you end at another point in history. And so for me, I started thinking about the ways that we could play around with the timeline and use it, of course, existing works and new works that have come into the collection. And so we quickly came into this idea of having three different sections within the reinstallation. So the first section is Forming US, People and Place. And so when we think about Forming US, it really is about illuminating the foundations of our nation and the genius of American art that hails from all walks of life, right? And so really, this is the origin story of us, the United States. It's an exploration of the role that art plays or can play in forming our collective or individual notions of identity. It shows how artists throughout time and different genres have used people, the land, and their overall environment as their subjects to convey our nation's triumphs, its ambitions, its social structure, even its failings, and much more. And so when we're thinking about how to do that, we started thinking about how we wanted to potentially pair different works together, right? So throughout this presentation, what you'll see is pairings, but that doesn't mean that we've put works right next to each other, right? We were thinking about how certain works in each gallery would inform forming US, forming US, right? So when we look at that in its totality. So of course we have the Marriage of Hiawatha by Edmonia Lewis and Robert S. Duncanson, Heart of the Andes. Those have been in the gallery formerly known as traditional, and we are thinking about them in you know, similar ways, but also really different ways. Thinking about the idea of, you know, Robert Duncanson, who never went to the Andes, but who was able to use uh, use use the work and as a point of departure, right? To see the original Heart of the Andes. Or looking at the Edmonia Lewis and sort of looking at the prevailing themes of that time frame and how those two things sort of intersect, right? I'm gonna go on and move on to the next slide. And so then we also, oh, I'm sorry, I hit forward too much. We also were thinking about people, right? People and how they inform our notions of identity. So when we think about William Merritt Chase, this is a really sort of representative work of the sort of late 19th century that shows a woman of affluence and style, right? And he was a really famous painter during his day and did paint people of affluence. Whereas juxtaposed against our Richard Diebenkorn, those are two really different images of women, right? And the time frame is really different. So if you look at it, we're talking about about 65, almost 66 years, right, in the time frame of how women are being represented in painting and in art. And I think that that's a really dynamic way to think about how throughout the history of art, different people have been portrayed in different ways, and how we've been able to grow as a nation, right, and grow as a people. And also just that the idea of our identities, they're not fixed, they're not static, right? As you grow as a person, your identity shifts and changes, right? As you're introduced to different people and places. And so really that's the heart of forming US, is just the idea that as our nation has forming or has been informing, that we are not static, that we have the ability to evolve, that people have contributed to the story of American art, and that they come from all places, all walks of life, all backgrounds. And I will tell you that I did not put any sort of our I'm waiting until we actually unveil American Genius to show you some of the works that we're really excited to put into the permanent collection reinstall. So a lot of these works you may have already seen and may be really familiar with, and that's okay. But I promise you, when you see it, when we finally open it, which will be in, goodness, almost less than a month, we'll be opening it. You will be really excited, I hope, as we are as well. And so Mathaltis Alton is someone that we know well in our collection. He was German born, but from resided in Grand Rapids and often traveled to Europe, where he was exposed to the Impressionists, whereas someone like Di Martelli, he observed workers at the Ford Brick and Tile Company. So this juxtaposition of how the land comes into play in different ways, right? So looking at farming as, you know, being something that is celebrated, but also just the transition to during the Industrial Revolution, right? Where you see more machines at work and at play in the land, which is kind of this juxtaposition you see here. And then, of course, we have another work from the Forming U.S. section. Other works are the Charles Henry Alston and the Robert Gwathmey. And so, for me, when I look at this particular work, Alston's Untitled Couple, it's said to portray Langston Hughes's 1925, The Weary Blues. But I also thought that, just looking at the paintings themselves and juxtaposing them, how like even their posturing seemed really similar in their treatment when you look at Gwathmey's figures versus Alston's figures. And I mean, we're talking about maybe a 20-year difference, almost a 20-year difference in production, maybe. And just how they both are starting to experiment with abstraction in a little bit, right? This is not necessarily the way that you would typically see representative subject matter. And so Gwathmey is regarded as one of the first white American artists to produce these dignified representations of African Americans through painting. And his work was largely fueled by social injustices, but his formal interests were shaped by European modernists such as Henri Matisse, Vincent van Gogh, Pablo Picasso. And you can also see that in Charles Alston's work, right? You can see these two really in conversation, two people sitting at a table, one is playing the piano, the other is sort of reading a book, and what do those signifiers mean, right? So these are regular everyday people that we see that make up the fabric of America, that are becoming the subjects of painting, which is really an important shift because historically painting starts as this way to sort of convey a social status or a place or an ideal. But here, these two subjects specifically are really just everyday themes, everyday people, which is really interesting to see here. Okay, I'm thinking, oop, I'm so sorry. I hit forward too soon. So we have our Philip Leslie Hale and Philomena Williamson. Those are two works that I thought were really important to reproduce because the art students is by Philip Leslie Hale really reflects a distinctive group of young men during the early 19th century. They're burgeoning artists. Hale was learned to paint from his older sister. I said city, I apologize. Older sister, and so later studies at prestigious art schools in Boston and New York. Philomena Williamson is definitely recognized as an important contemporary artist, but she's portraying a different group of a different group of young women, which are young women, right? So I thought it was really interesting to juxtapose this sort of idea of transitioning from one state to another. Sort of, you see young male artists, and then you see these young women that are on the precipice of their of leaving girlhood, right? Of going into a more adult-like state, and what that means. So you have the representation of all men versus the representation of all women in this particular presentation. And then Marilyn Johnson, who is someone who is really well known to you here in Kalamazoo, versus Adia Millet, who is an emerging artist. She was actually featured in the Black Refractions exhibition last year. And these are two very different paintings, right? But they're juxtaposed against each other because you look at Stewart Avenue, which is this is sort of a close-up cropped framing of homes and really recognizable, a really recognizable place, right? Whereas Adia Millet is taking a very same subject and she's abstracting it. So she's talking about notions of place and home and these geometric shapes sort of shift and merge together to sort of form this idea that we, like the world, that we're always moving from one state to another, right? That home can shift, our notion of home can shift, our notion of place can shift. And I like the sort of closer cropping that you see in Johnson's work, because it's a very it's a very distinct perspective, and you do get to see the sort of geometry of shapes too as well. And so I'm moving on to another section that we have in this show called Design and Purpose. Design and Purpose, really, for me, at one point, if you remember in the show I mentioned earlier, The Way Forward, there was a section in The Way Forward that talked about the Kirk Newman Art School. And when we were thinking about design and purpose, we were really thinking about disciplines that the Kirk Newman Art School represents, but also the disciplines that we collect that we collect ourselves at the KIA. So we have juxtapositions of different still lives. Of course, Severin Rosen, who was one of the preeminent painters of his day, very well known for still lives, and someone like Reginald Gammon, who actually was here and was a professor of painting at Western. And just the idea that, this is a classic subject that artists continue to treat over and over again, that can be something that you use to hone one's skill, or something that you use to make a statement about the world in which you live, right? So as you see here with Severin Rosen's work here, the sort of overflowing and abundance of the fruit may sort of allude to the idea, like he fled from the U.S. fled to the U.S. from Germany after failed revolutions in 1848. And so just thinking about the overflowing and abundance of maybe the monarchy versus something that's a really sort of traditional harkening here in the Gammon representation of still life. And then Ardale Chihuly with Janet Fish. Certainly, thinking about Janet Fish, she was a painter at Yale, and she was there during a time when everybody was working on abstract work, and she herself refused to become an abstractionist. And we really like this idea of how she uses light in her work. And the same goes for Dale Chihuly, when we see the lightness in his work, the sort of mimicking of form and shape and color certainly go into that. And again, this is another representation of still life. And just the different use of media too. So in Design and Purpose, we really sort of look at how different materials come into play and what that means in American society and craft. Of course, we highlight our Tiffany collection. As you all may well know, just how Tiffany was established as a decorative art studio, a design company that operated under many names from the 1800s through the 1930s, really was instrumental in the formation of the sort of craft movement and the elevation of craft, right? When you see glass work and when you see some of these design motifs. So this juxtaposition of the Miriam Shapiro, the square root of paradise, is kind of like it's kind of like an oxymoron, right? Because Miriam Shapiro was one of the preeminent artists, what considered one of the mothers of feminism. And then you see this sort of Tiffany flower form base, which also uses flowers as its subject, as a sort of decorative motif and element. And she uses flowers as a decorative element and motif, but also to talk about women and craft, and sort of turning on its head the idea of how women are involved in craft, or what is women's work, right? And we do know that in the Tiffany the Tiffany workshops, there were men and women that worked and created many of these designs. Okay, I'm sorry, I hit forward too quickly, and so I think I might. Okay. So then moving on to, we also see this idea of the idea of form and function and then juxtaposition. So something like the Schreckengost Jazz Bowl, which certainly looks like it could be used for a sort of traditional use. And then Maria Scott's Salt Bowl, which is, you know, a sort of textural exploration for the senses, right? It really is pure artistic expression in both, but there's this idea that one maybe could be used and one is not necessarily about use, it's purpose, right? And then, of course, the necklace of seven frogs with the Tiffany brooch. We really wanted to sort of juxtapose this idea that there were decorative elements such as jewelry that really had a long-standing history and what that meant during their different time periods. Certainly, adornment is something that is a time-old tradition. It crosses cultures. And so, just looking at how adornment crosses cultures and historically has played a role in the decorative arts is another theme that you'll see. And then the tenora. So this is one of a really interesting piece because both of these works reference how different cultures use dance as a part dance as a tradition, right? Is as a tool of communication and as an art form. So you have the tenora, which really is a common Egyptian folk dance, and then you have the dance wand from the oceanic culture, which is something that is held and actually used as in the dance, the ritual dance that you see. Both of them, well, not both of them are not held, obviously. Sorry. So then you move on, and we have rediscovering abstraction. So rediscovering abstraction really looks at abstraction as a uniquely American movement, looking at the idea that the end of World War II brings forth a period of creative freedom and expression that see Americans depart from traditional modes of production, the figurative. And this is really important because then you get to see the sort of limits that are placed on women, that are placed on artists of color. You sort of see the playing field in some sorts begins to level, because you can talk about the same things but in different ways, right? And then this also allows for the artist and to be very expressive and emotive and let the audience discover their own meaning, form their own meanings of the work. And so we have Franz Klein's Red Crayon with Olga Albizu's Untitled. It really is about juxtaposing, thinking about Olga Albizu. She was at one point a student of Hans Hofmann and also Esteban Vincente. Franz Klein would have been in this sort of grouping, which was really important for us to sort of think about how artists might have been in conversation, obviously, with one another when it comes to abstraction. And you see the dynamism and coloring is very different, but marking somewhat also recall each other. And then this is not necessarily, again, I want to reiterate that the pairings that you see aren't necessarily the pairings that will be up in the galleries per se. But I thought that this was an interesting pairing because Merton Simpson, he was one of the preeminent dealers of African art during his time, but he was also one of those artists that was really underlooked in his day, having been able to have a show at the Guggenheim and MoMA in the 50s. And then someone like Helen Fisher, who is also overlooked. There isn't that much information about her as well. There may be some information about her being at Western Michigan University, Western Michigan University during the 50s, but the information is just really not known about her. And that's the thing that I think has been the most interesting and challenging. When you look at these artists, they're certainly worthy and deserving of consideration and further exploration. You look at Helen Fisher's work, and she specifically, when I look at this work, I thought to myself, like, wow, this could be cell structure, or maybe this is like what it looks like to fly, you know, in a plane, what the land looks like, right? Um, and so just juxtaposing artists and bringing out artists that have been not as well known, but that have been certainly masters in their own right, has been a really big part of what we've been doing here. You will definitely see more artists of color, more women artists represented in the exhibition. I know I haven't necessarily uh, said that, but I will say that. Marcia Wood was again another local artist that you all may know very well, who was a sculptor and a painter. And this fire piece, which I thought was really kind of apt to compare with the Howard Hodgkin painting, which is considered, this is, even though this is abstract, is called First Portrait of Terence McInerney, which is sort of the idea of fire and something two very representative subject matters being able to be depicted in a non-representational way, which is also very important in abstract work. And then Richard Hunt and Edward Evans. So I really like the idea of juxtaposing sculpture and painting and talking about this idea how sculpture begins to transcend the boundaries of representational subject matters. Specifically, Richard Hunt, who we have more than one sculpture in our collection. We have several of his works on paper, also a part of our collection. He's one of the preeminent masters of using his sculpture to show the sort of non-representational beauty of the world, right? And I really appreciate his work. He's been doing it for many years. He's been exhibited at the Guggenheim, MoMA. I mean, and he's really well known. And of course, Edward Evans is also another well-known artist. And his work, when I looked at this and found this painting, and that's another thing that I should talk about, is we went into the vaults, that's what we call them, the vaults, and finding this painting was sort of just one of those moments when I was like, oh, this would be really cool to sort of talk about how artists were able to make you think that they were doing or using one medium, but really not, right? So this juxtaposition of painted steel, it's called After the Fall, versus, or that looks like painted steel, or versus, you know, cast bronze, and what that means. And excuse me, I'm gonna take a quick, I'm getting a little parched, I apologize. So then also you'll see sculpture as a part of the abstract, the section. Rediscovering abstraction, Beverly Peppers. I mean, certainly minimalism is a big thing that happens where people stop being as expressive and they want to control the lines and they really focus on geometric shape, versus Peter Voulkos's Yellowstone Saga, which is about being expressive, right? So you have this oppositional states that people start to explore in American art. and then the Shang Shei and Paul Jenkins. Shang Shei. This was another work that I have been looking at. I've been looking at both of these, and I'm happy to bring them out of the vault, so to speak. Um, Shang Shei, his work was certainly, he was in sort of that second wave of abstract expressionism, and he lives and works. He immigrated from China. And so his work blends East and West. And Pot, oh my goodness, Ptolemy, Zodia is Paul Jenkins definitely is explored like nature in his work in a different way. So I like the idea of how both of these works are very evocative of nature, explorations in nature, but then they're also very abstract works as well. So I told you I wasn't going to talk as much, but I think I did. Um, oh no, I apologize. I see my screen is going, just went really, really fast through slides. But what I really wanted to talk about what today was how what you will see in the presentation of Unveiling American Genius really is the culmination of the organization thinking about how we as a people come together and form this great nation known as the United States of America, how there are different experiences, different backgrounds, different cultures that make up this wonderful and dynamic and sometimes contradictory fabric of our nation. But at the same time, that creative expression is just one of the highest forms of what can bind us together, what can help us have conversation, what can bridge divides. And so in Unveiling American Genius, it's my hope, and I know the hope of my colleagues and all the people that have been working so hard on this exhibition, to present to you our collection in a way that shows how these different movements are uniquely American, but also that they represent different people, different places, different identities, and different cultures that make up who we are as Americans. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking a little bit. And if you want to ask me any questions about how these sections came to be, because we had lots of people that weighed in and lots of conversation, I would love to do that because I feel like I've been talking for a good long bit. And I appreciate your attention, time and attention. Ooh, again, I apologize. I'm not even touching I'm not even touching my cursor. I have no idea. My computer technology, it has a mind of its own. Well, I'm glad that you're still getting. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm gonna stop the share maybe.
We're here.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. I actually have a reference I'll give you later. I'll email you about the Pete Volkus sculpture, because we had a guest here once who went through all the KIA collections. And when he went into the collection area, but then when he saw that one, he had a story about it that was controversial at the time, but he's got the recording to prove that he knows what it's about with Pete Volkus, and you might like to know about that. So I'll send you the connection.
Oh, that would be lovely. I appreciate that.
Just like what you need is more to do.
I mean, no, but you know what, Barbara, I always appreciate you so much. So thank you for tuning in today. It's lovely to see your face.
Oh, it's great to be here and to see what's going on.
No, I'm really excited about this presentation. I mean, I tried not to be so personal as far as why I was so excited, but I remember when Belinda sort of said that this was a project that had to be done. And I thought to myself, like, oh gosh, this is a big project to do in less than in a year. Being a brand new chief curator to come in and do a reorganization is not an easy feat, but I had such a great team and people really weighed in and I really appreciated. We even had community feedback in some instances and had docents that came in and talked with us and gave us some really good helpful insights as well too. So I have to say that, you know, when I first started this project, it really seemed like a very daunting task. And then as I got through, as I started to go through it, I was like, this is not nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. And it was a lot of fun too. It was a lot of fun.
Sure. Of course it was.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of
I'm
fun.
going to have to say goodbye right now.
Yes.
But I'll be in touch later, and thanks a lot for doing this.
Thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Is there any other question? Any other people that want to comment?
So you've shown works and talked about pairing these. So are these physically related to one another? Are they hung right next to each other?
Okay, so let me, yes, I hear your question. You're asking if they're physically hung together. Some works are next to one another and some works aren't. I mean, one of the reasons why I showed you pairings today was because I really wanted people to get a sense of how the themes were informed. Because sometimes you can hang things next to one another and it just works, right? And then sometimes you can't do that. Just because it doesn't necessarily aesthetically make the connection. I'll say it that way. But some works are hung next to one another and some works aren't. It really is about the theme of each of the sections more so than the pairings. The pairings really, we started with pairing things up because it really helped us to demonstrate we were on the right track with the theme, with the ideas, with the way we were thinking about how the sections were coming together. So yes and no, a little bit of yes, a little bit of no.
Well, and if I could just pursue that one just further, I don't know how big you are on the size of the wall cards. I mean, are there going to be hints to the viewers of which ones to look at, or is that up to the gallery viewer?
I think what was really important was for us to treat the works as individual works, because I think that's important, right? So the works sometimes like, I wouldn't say that we necessarily wrote labels that talked about a connection to another work in the exhibition or in the gallery, just because it's really important for us to sort of present the work as on its own standing. But I think that it's the section text that really sort of draw things together, right? That's really what we're hoping, that people kind of get these ideas. And so we also ask a lot of questions of our viewers. We ask a lot of questions because in no way, I think one of the things was it last year? Maybe it was in the spring of 2019. Madeline Grinstein, she's the director of the MCA Chicago. She specifically said something that really has been a thing that I've kind of taken to heart about sharing authority with different constituencies. So I think it's like, for so long, curatorial work has been about like saying, this is what this means. And I think that what we try to do in our particular presentation is present the information, but not tell you what to think. Because I think that that's a fair thing, is to say, you know, this is what was happening during this time frame, And this is how we may think about it, but also allowing you as the public and the viewer to come to your own conclusions. I think that that's fair. And I really, like I said, I really appreciated kind of having that aha moment with Dr. Grunstein when she said that about making sure that we share our authority with our publics. That's important.
This is Jessica. I just wanted to come on and say that if you have a question, but you don't want to ask it out loud, or if you are having trouble turning your microphone on, you can either wave and I'll try to help you turn your microphone on, or you can always type it into the chat box.
I know we're waiting for everyone to say, some people to say a little bit else.
I have a question.
Hi.
Hi. How many sections are in this exhibit?
Say it again.
How many different sections are there? How many themes?
So there are 3 themes, right? So the first theme is forming US, the second theme is designing design and purpose, and the third theme is rediscovering abstraction. And certainly we definitely mix things up. So there will be works that you'll see that aren't in abstraction, but they are maybe in our forming US section. And you'll say, like, why is that there? And part of it is because we really wanted to press people to think about the works that we have in our collection in different ways.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And there are almost about 130 works in the show, so it's a healthy size. I know we're all okay. No one has any pressing questions about how this exhibition got put together. You all are such a good audience. I will also tell you, say again, just how much I'm really looking forward to working with the docent crew on thinking about this particular installation, because I think this is one of those times where there's no way you're going to be able to hit every single work, like to be able to build a tour, but you certainly will be able to build some really different and unique ways that you talk about the works that are in the show. Like I feel really excited for all of you to be able to do that once we're able to actually physically give tours. And I know that Jessica has worked really hard to help the docent crew figure out how to do virtual tours. So I'm looking forward to working with Jessica on that as well.
I also, this is Jessica, wanted to just add that I see Betsy Start is here. So maybe some of you were at Betsy's ArtBreak and maybe some of you were not. So the Connecting Chords Music Festival hired some local artists or patroned some local artists, local musicians to create artwork that, or sorry, music that is inspired by some of the works in this exhibition. And you can go and listen to some of those pieces, or I think all the pieces, on their Resonance webpage. But when you come to the exhibition, for not a long period of time, but for some period of time, you would be able to, I think, scan a QR code, correct me if I'm wrong, but scan a QR code that would take you to listen to the work of music inspired by the work of art. So we're very excited when the musician, or when the galleries are open, that you could come in, and if you had your headphones, you could, you know, have a nice little reflective moment of hearing how 2 artists across time have interacted with one another.
Yeah, and just with your permission, I could put the link up here if people wanted to go to that.
I was actually just
and-
about to do that, Betsy.
Oh, okay, great. There we go. Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
I
8
just
different.
did it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I really have to say, I was really impressed by the project. I really was. I thought that everyone did such a great job. And if you even take a look at that website, Our Dear Public, and please do go and visit. What you'll see is that the composers also gave specific rationales for why they created the compositions, which is really very interesting, because then you can kind of feel your own way, like, oh, okay, I can see that. Or, you can have a difference of opinion. I really love the idea that the arts allow for so many different interpretations, multiple interpretations, actually. And I think that everyone did such a good job just trying to, put their own spin on it, which is wonderful. And the joy of art, right? Like the ability that everyone can have a voice. So yeah.
Well, and also it's just I mean, this is just 8 musicians in the Kalamazoo area, that just the depth of talent and abilities and varieties of music. It's really, it was very exciting for me to see the things come in and get to listen to them each time.
Yes. So if any of you, hopefully you all have been able to look at the chat, because we did put the link in there for you to go and take a look. And I hope that you'll spend some time with the music that has been composed. I mean, it was really, really, really well done and beautiful. Okay. Any other questions?
So this is Jessica again. If there are no other questions, it's pretty close to the end of the program, so I feel that we could go ahead and say goodbye to one another. But the exhibition is opening soon-ish, right, Rahima?
Yes, it is opening soon. I guess I should have addressed that we've had some supply chain delays, which is why this is not opened sooner. But we are officially in business. I walked down in the galleries oh gosh, today is Tuesday, so yesterday. I walked in the galleries yesterday and they look fabulous. I am ready. I have all of the things ready. I'm ready to hang some paintings and install some sculptures. Ready. So yes, the second week of December, we're shooting for it, and I think that we'll get it done. So
Yay. So please come and see us in the second week of December. We may or may not have some additional days added to when the galleries are open. That information would be on our website. But we're so excited that this project is going to be on display soon for everyone to be able to come in and enjoy. And again, my name is Jessica Sundstrom. If you have any questions about ArtBreak or about anything you've heard today, you can get in contact with me. And there will be, I'm sure, many more ArtBreaks that will focus on things in the permanent collection. And there's a lot of new exciting things that you're going to get to see, and a new way of it being done. And thanks so much to Rahima Barber for this really excellent presentation. This exciting teaser about what we're doing here at the KIA.
Yes, and I should also note that, believe us, we will be doing more around Unveiling American Genius, as far as more programs and more detailed explanation. I just didn't want to give everything away today. I want you to come and see it, which is why you're like, probably like, she gave me more questions than answers, which is right. It's very deliberate. It's very deliberate, folks. But I'm looking forward to seeing you. I know Jessica's looking forward to seeing you. As always, when you finally do see it, please let us know what you think. And don't hesitate. I love to hear from each and every one of you. So
Thank you.
Right.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully, we'll see a few of you on Thursday night with Albert Chung. Again, you can find information about that program on our website. But everyone have a really, really lovely Tuesday. Go outside and enjoy this wonderful weather if you can.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.